a bill proposed here by two Democratic members of Congress. In the House, Carolyn Maloney from New York, and in the Senate, Ed Markey from Massachusetts, to give $10 million to the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, to have them study the effects of gun violence. Since 1996, there was a small CDC-funded study about gun violence, and Republicans, of course, in 1996, backed with their NRA money, went ballistic, and that budget has shrunk from the limited amount that it was in 1996 to zero. So this new legislation that these guys introduced would restore that funding. Here's the quote from Carolyn Maloney on this. In America, gun violence, she says, kills twice as many children as cancer. Think about that for a moment. And yet political grandstanding has halted funding for public health research to understand that crisis. The NRA has responded thoughtfully with this. The NRA saying CDC funding is unethical. That's from the National Rifle Association. Centers for Disease Control, again, twice as many children die from gun violence as cancer, and they suggest that it's worth studying. Part of the CDC's mandate, the official title, again, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Another NRA-backed lackey, Jack Kingston, who comes across like when he's on TV as a totally normal guy, but he isn't. Jack Kingston, a representative from Georgia, had this to say: the president's request to fund propaganda for his gun-grabbing initiatives through the CDC will not be included in the fiscal year 2015 appropriations bill. Gun-grabbing initiatives. Maloney and Markey went to the president and asked him to include this in his budget, the $10 million for the CDC, and the president has done so. Good for him. Kudos to the president. Whether he fights for it, I don't know. So Republicans obviously are against research, and it turns out we have some breaking news on this story. They're not just against research when it comes to gun violence. Isn't that right, John?
Yes. So we found out just today, I believe, they passed an amendment to the National Defense Authorization Bill that would stop the military from using any of the money that they're giving to the military to investigate climate change, the effects of climate change on national security, to do anything about it, or basically to be prepared in any way for how climate change will influence or create conflicts in the future.
Well, how do they look at them? These are our elected officials. These are guys who are supposed to, even if it's bad news, you read a scientific report that climate change could affect our defense capabilities, could affect how we defend the country, could prepare us for the next threat that we will face, that our enemies could use knowledge because they're maybe reading this of climate change to exploit certain areas where we would be underprepared and underfunded. Wouldn't we want to take that seriously? Republicans, how do you send these guys to Capitol Hill anymore? How do you do it? I just, as always with, every time we criticize Obama, and it's always valid, we're missing, to me, consistently the big picture, which is that one half of the government is completely crazy and dangerous. And it is irresponsible to be a Republican at this point. It is not even remotely irresponsible to think that you look for a political system that connects to the same thing that you thought Reagan-era Republicans believed. That's fine. But if you think that, you can't vote for a Republican now, and you have to hope for there's a day where responsible conservatives are back in power and can do the things that they want to do. That will still fuck the little guy. And income inequality is not likely to get any better under that. But they won't be completely crazy, and they won't thumb their nose at science like these guys.